There was a blue jar on my grandmother's dresser, and everything she needed was in that room or in her kitchen. No counter downtown ever sold her a thing she couldn't already make herself. That is the whole video right there. 21 things black women were doing in the 1960s that a whole industry spent the next 60 years calling backward and unsophisticated, right up until the day they poured the very same thing into a heavy jar with a name you couldn't pronounce and sold it back to your granddaughter for $90. And I am going to end on the three they didn't just laugh at, the three they sold us instead. One of them got pulled off the shelves so quietly you never heard the news, and one of them is still hurting women today. Hold that at the back of your mind because it turns the whole thing over. The kitchen was never the dangerous part. Let me start with the one every single one of us can already see. Number one, the blue jar, plain petroleum jelly, $1 and some change at any drugstore in America. My grandmother wore it to bed on her face, her elbows, her knees, the backs of her heels, and she smoothed it down the ashy shin of a child before church. The skin doctors of the day sniffed at it, said it would clog you up and ruin your face. We kept using it because we could see our own reflections and our skin was soft and holding. She was right and they were wrong. It sits on top and locks the water in so the skin underneath can heal itself. And that is the exact thing those young girls online are doing right now, smearing it on at night and calling it slugging like they thought of it. Baby, your grandmother was slugging in 1962. She just didn't film it. Castor oil is number two, and it lived in a little bottle by the comb. Thick gold, slow as molasses. Saturday night, the hair parted into sections. That oil worked down into the scalp and along the edges before Sunday morning. It grew the hair thicker and it held the edges, and they called that an old wives' tale, too. A fatty acid in it calms the scalp and seals the moisture into the strand so it stops snapping off in your hand. Nobody had to teach my grandmother the chemistry. She had eyes, and she had daughters with hair down their backs. Number three is the smell of my entire childhood. Cocoa butter, that deep chocolate scent off the hard yellow bar you had to warm in your hands before it would give. Every expecting woman in the family rubbed it into her belly morning and night, all the way through, and passed the jar down like it was scripture. It is full of the fats that keep skin soft and giving while it stretches. Whether it erased every last mark, I will let the women watching fight about. But I have watched women in my own line carry babies and come out the other side with skin like poured glass. It was ours before it was anybody's luxury. Now here is one that walked to us all the way from West Africa. Raw shea butter, number four, the real kind, that grayish cream that came in a lump and smelled like the ground after rain. It moved through hands and family and community long before any company learned to say the word. Women used it on everything: the dry scalp, the cracked heel, a whole baby head to toe, their own face against the coming lines. My grandmother kept a piece of it wrapped in wax paper, and she would soften it slow between her palms until it turned to oil, humming while she did it, and she never once measured a thing. For decades, the industry acted like it wasn't there, and now raw shea is the crown jewel in creams that cost more than she spent on beauty in a year. The same butter off the same tree. They only just found out we already had it. Number five is a plant sitting in a clay pot on the kitchen windowsill, watered like it was kin. Somebody caught a hand on the hot comb or the stove, And before a single soul thought about a doctor, my grandmother snapped a fat leaf off that aloe, split it down the middle, and laid the cool gel right against the burn. It killed the sting and it closed the skin faster than anything from a store. The science people have since counted more than 70 active compounds packed inside that one plant. It quiets the inflammation, it hurries a burn along, it helps the skin stitch itself shut. A whole pharmacy growing in a pot for the cost of remembering to water it. This next one we whispered about more than we said out loud. Apple cider vinegar number 6, a few spoonfuls in a cup of water, poured through the hair as the very last rinse. The smell was sharp and nobody was in love with it, but the hair came out shining and soft and easy to move through. It cut off all the buildup the shampoo left behind, and it settled the scalp, and women swore it took the itch and the winter flakes right out. Walk into any store today, and there is a clarifying rinse in a beautiful bottle, doing the same work the kitchen jug did for pennies. Number 7 is the one they should be most ashamed of, and I learned it from the woman who lived it. Miss Ada, who I stood next to at work for the better part of 15 years, would pour the cloudy water off her rice, let it cool in a jar, and run it slow through her hair after every wash. She got it from the women in her family going back further than she could count the names, and she had hair down the middle of her back at an age when the rest of us were watching ours give up at the crown. It strengthens the strand and lays down a shine you cannot buy. And it is the plainest proof of the whole thing I am walking you through. That free water, the stuff you were 1 second from pouring down the drain, is sold to your granddaughter now as a serum for $30. They did not invent a thing. They found Miss Ada's rinse and put a price on it. Number 8 lived on the shelf next to the biscuits. Raw honey spread thick over a clean face, left to sit its 20 minutes, rinsed off warm. It pulled the impurities up and out and left the skin soft and lit from underneath. It works because honey carries a natural thing that fights the bacteria behind a breakout, and it draws water into the skin and holds it there. The same jar that sweetened the tea was a facial. My grandmother worked that out in the pantry on a Tuesday, long before anybody put a fancy name on it. The one that smelled the worst worked close to the best. Number 9, eggs and mayonnaise beaten together and worked all the way through wet hair, then a plastic cap and a whole lot of patience. The house did not smell like roses, I will not lie to you. My grandmother would send us out on the porch while it set. But the hair came out of that treatment soft and shining and strong, less breakage every single time. The egg is protein, which is exactly what a beat-up strand is starving for, and the mayonnaise is oil and more egg sinking in behind it to hold the moisture. A whole bowl of it cost her about a quarter. Number 10 is the green jar with the loud smell that you know if you were there. Hair grease, the blue magic, and all the ones like it. A fingertip scoop worked along the scalp one part at a time before the braiding or the press. This was its own ceremony. A child on the floor between her mother's knees, the parts coming slow and even, the conversation low, an afternoon that went nowhere and meant everything. They said greasing the scalp did nothing, but that grease laid a barrier over the scalp and the strand that kept the moisture from leaving and took some of the beating out of the styling. It was protection, and it was a mother's careful hands, and the hair could tell the difference. Let me stop us right at the halfway point and say the thing plain. Every one of these was already sitting in a black home for $1 or for nothing, and every one of them the industry first told us was too simple and too country to take seriously. Then they picked it up and charged us to buy our own knowing back. Keep that close, because those three waiting at the end are going to show you this was never once about whether the honey and the rice water worked. Number 11 quieted every itch we ever had. Plain oatmeal ground down fine and stirred into a warm bath until the water turned milky and soft. The heat rash, the eczema, a child spotted head to toe with chicken pox, a grown woman with skin gone tight in January, all of it went down into that cloudy water and came up soothed. This is the one the science chased all the way to the finish line. The government's own experts now list colloidal oatmeal, which is nothing but that same grain ground fine, as a real skin protectant with proven power to calm inflammation. It was in the breakfast box the whole time. Number 12 came up from the islands and up out of the south at the same time. Coconut oil, solid and white in the jar, warmed between the palms and smoothed over skin and hair and a baby from the top of the head to the soles of the feet. That tropical smell was the smell of somebody loving on you. It carries a fatty acid that actually gets down inside the hair strand where most oils only sit on top. And a mother greasing her child down after a bath was doing something the strand remembered. There was a plain bottle in every medicine cabinet, and that is number 13. Witch hazel swept across the face on a cotton ball after washing. A couple dollars any drugstore, and every teenager in a war with oily skin got handed it like a rite of passage. It calmed the red down, tightened the skin, kept the breakouts from coming up. It is loaded with a natural compound that settles irritation, and it is still one of the best few dollars you will ever put on your face. A whole generation grew up on it before anybody thought to make it expensive. Number 14 you could eat or scrub with, and we did both. Sugar, plain white sugar mixed with a little oil and rubbed over the rough places, the elbows and the knees and the heels that went ashy in the cold. The grains buffed the dead skin off while the oil sank in right behind them. A woman did this the night before a wedding, before Easter, before any morning she wanted her skin to sit right coming out of a good dress. Sugar is a natural source of the very acid the fancy exfoliating peels are built on. Grandmothers were giving themselves a chemical peel at the kitchen counter and calling it nothing but getting ready. There was a glass bottle on the vanity that I can still see, and that is number 15. Rose water, sometimes with a drop of glycerin worked in, misted over the face after washing or any hour the skin felt worn out. Some women steeped the petals down themselves and handed the recipe to a daughter. It calmed the skin, it evened it, and it smelled like something a woman did purely for her own self. That same rose water is a $28 facial mist today, sold like it drifted down out of a sky over Paris. It came off a rose bush in the side yard. Number 16 protected everything the other 20 built. The silk scarf, the wrap tied down at night over the fresh press or the set. Every black woman past a certain age knows the exact feel of that scarf and knows precisely why it went on. It kept the cotton pillowcase from drinking the oil out of the hair and roughing the strands up all night long. It saved the edges. It made the style last past one day. My grandmother did that with a scarf off her own head every night of her life, and so did yours. Baking soda is number 17, and it did double duty. A little on the wet toothbrush, scrub gentle, and it took the coffee and the years off the teeth. Same box that scoured the kitchen sink brightened the smile. It is a mild abrasive, just rough enough to lift the surface stain and no rougher. And half the whitening toothpastes in the aisle now print it right there on the label as their special secret. Everything I have named so far was gentle enough to hand a child. Hold on to that word gentle, because the three I am about to show you were sold off the very same shelves, and not one of them was. Number 18 was the secret every mother handed down before the prom. Egg whites, separated clean off the yolk, whisked up a little, painted across the face and left to dry into a tight pool, then rinsed with cool water. 15 minutes of sitting dead still, no talking and no smiling, and the skin came up firmer, the pores looked smaller, the whole face looked lifted. The protein in that egg white draws the skin taut for a while, a true temporary lift for the price of one egg minus the yolk you already scrambled for breakfast. Number 19 carried the continent in it. Black soap, the real os doo-doo, dark and soft and a little gritty, made the old way with plantain skins burned to ash and worked into oils. It came through the same community hands as the shea. Women washed the face and the body with it, and it came clean without going raw, and it evened the tone she already had instead of stripping her down. For years you only got it if you knew somebody who knew somebody back home. It cleaned 3 generations before a company ever caught the scent of it. Number 20, even a lot of us let slip. The bluing rinse for gray hair. A drop or two of laundry bluing in the rinse water, and the yellow, brassy cast that creeps into gray hair gets canceled right out, so the gray goes bright and clean and silver instead of dingy. The old women knew it cold, and it cost pennies. It is the whole entire idea behind every purple shampoo they sell today, for the same job at 10 times the money. Same color science worked out at the laundry line. And number 21 was love wearing the costume of a hairstyle. Thread wrapping and the tight bound styles that stretched the natural hair out and tucked it away safe. Hours would pass, a girl on the floor between her mother's knees, each section wrapped and bound, and the style held for weeks at a stretch. It came straight down from our African ancestors, unbroken, and it did the exact thing the hair experts now dress up in a term: protective styling for length retention. Less handling, less breakage, more of your hair kept on your head. It was never just hair. It was a woman's hands in your hair for a whole afternoon, saying without a single word that you were worth every minute of it. So there is the whole list. 21 things that were free or close to it, that worked, that we got talked clean out of, and that came back wearing a price tag. And you might be sitting there thinking, all right, fine, but at least none of it was dangerous. At least nobody got hurt over where the money went. That is exactly the place I have to slow all the way down. Because here is what they were pressing into our hands with the other arm in those same years off those same shelves, while they were calling the honey and the shea unsophisticated. 3 things, and these 3 are what the whole story was really built to keep quiet. The first one covered the gray, the progressive hair dyes, the kind you combed through a little at a time so the gray went dark slow over a couple of weeks. Women trusted them precisely because they were gentle, no harsh line, no shock. What was doing the darkening day after day was a heavy metal. Lead acetate soaking in a little through the scalp every time, stacking up in the body over the years. The same poison they were scraping out of the paint and out of the gasoline in those very years, they left sitting in a hair product aimed at us, behind nothing but a little printed label. And the Food and Drug Administration did not finally ban lead acetate from hair dye until the year 2022. Sit with that number. More than 60 years after the women in the 1960s were combing it into their gray because there is no safe level of lead in a human body, and that much was known the entire time. The second one went after the skin. The lightening creams, the fade creams pushed hard at black women to even the tone and chase the dark spots, working a wound this country cut into us on purpose. The active thing in so many of them was hydroquinone, and it worked by killing off the very cells that give your skin its color. Used and used over time, on plenty of women it turned around and did the opposite of what it swore. It left permanent blue-black patches sunk into the skin, a thing called ochronosis, and it does not fade back out. Women reaching for an even tone got themselves marked for life. The regulators finally forced the over-the-counter versions off the market in 2020 and said the word plainly, that they were not safe, and there it had been sitting an arm's reach from the cocoa butter. The third one still has its paper trail being written this decade. The lye relaxer. Sodium hydroxide, strong enough that the beautician pulled on gloves to spread it, laid bare against a black woman's scalp, burning, sometimes clear to a blister, all in the name of straight hair for a world that would not accept the other kind. Ultra Sheen put the no-base version into every household starting in 1965. And it did not stop at grown women. Mothers sat little girls down and relaxed their hair young, some before they were 10 years old, because a school and a workplace and a whole country had made it plain that our natural hair was a problem to be fixed. A child got her first chemical burn learning she was not acceptable as she came. The burns you could see were only ever half of it. Researchers tracked almost 34,000 women for about 11 years and found that the ones using chemical straighteners often were more than twice as likely to develop uterine cancer, more than twice. And black women use them the most and start on them the youngest. That is not a rumor passed over a fence. That was published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute in 2022. So look hard at what they actually did. They stood in front of a black woman and told her the honey on her face was ignorant, the grease in her hair was country, the she her own people carried across an ocean was worth nothing at all. And in the same breath, from the same aisle, they handed her lead for her gray, bleach for her spots, and lye for her scalp and her baby's scalp. They only needed you to stop trusting the kitchen so that you would start trusting them. The free things were the safe things the entire time. Here is what I want you to carry out of this from an old woman who has watched the whole circle come back around. Not one of those 21 was ever banned, because there is no banning a pantry. You cannot outlaw a windowsill plant or a jar of honey or a scarf tied down at night. So they did the only thing left to them. They made a whole generation ashamed of it, taught us the free thing was the poor woman's thing and the dear thing was the better thing, and then poured our own remedies into their expensive jars. But shame only holds while you agree to carry it. That blue jar on my grandmother's dresser was a laboratory, and her kitchen was a pharmacy, and both are still open the second you decide to walk back in. Before I let you go, do one thing for me down in the comments. Tell me which one was on your grandmother's dresser or your own mother's shelf. The blue jar, the green grease, the cocoa butter, the aloe standing in the window. Say its name because some younger woman is going to scroll past and remember something she was just about to let go of for good. And if you are one of us, one of the women who never fully swallowed the idea that the old ways were foolish, who kept a little of it going even when they told you to quit, then you have been home this whole time. Come sit down and stay. Subscribe, and the next thing they buried and sold back to us, I will hand to you first, the way your grandmother would have, across the kitchen table, because it belonged to us before it ever belonged to them.